Hello, friends. In the new episode of Crit Talks with Dr. Anand Kulkarni. In the last few episodes, we have tried to understand criticism, that is modern criticism and new criticism. And in the last episode, Sir mentioned about Marxism while discussing about new criticism, which is exactly opposite of Marxism. That is what he said. And therefore, today, let us take up this entire idea of what exactly Marxist critical theory is. Sir, welcome you in the show. I welcome Ganesham also. So to begin with, though we call it as a modern phenomena, uh, could you elaborate us on the historical conditions on which Marxism came forward? And the second thing is that what are the major concepts of Marxism? Is it a homogeneous theory, or is it something where different concepts are in a way propounded by Karl Marx and of course Friedrich Engels? So just elaborate us on the background of Marxism.
Thank you, Dr. Pranav Ratnapakhi and Professor Ganesh Bogate and viewers as well. Today we shall discuss in nutshell Marxist literary criticism. Before that, we have to understand as a background the theory of Marxism. We all know Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels proposed the theory called Marxism. In fact, Marx and Engels did not expect their theory to be named after Marx, but in the succeeding periods it happened. Marxism as a theory is in fact political and economic. And there is very less of literature in it. So Marxism is basically a critique of capitalism. That we have to understand. Marxism is basically a critique of capitalism. Marx and Engels both criticized the wealthy class and their and the suppression and domination of the poor class. So the other thing that Marxism did was it produced, perhaps for the first time, the economic interpretation of history, economic analysis of history. So economics, history, society, politics, and culture are some of the major areas in which both Marx and Engels worked and came out with an extremely revolutionary and highly influential theory called Marxism. It is, as I said, basically a social and political theory accompanied with the economic ideas. This is roughly what Marxism is all about.
Yeah.
Marxist literary criticism is derived from the principles of Marxism. Terry Eagleton tells us, and that is very true also, the famous Marxist Eagleton tells us that Marx did not propose any separate theory about literature, and he did not even propose any separate theory about criticism as well. That is, he did not talk in detail about literature and in detail about the appreciation of literature.
Right.
But he talked, he took art and literature seriously, and he talked about art and literature to some extent. He was, we all know, a voracious reader and a lover of literature and of poetry as well. Naturally, he had his own views about poetry and literature. But later Marxist critics derived certain principles, certain ideas from Marxism and built a theory which has later been come to known as, it has later been called as Marxist literary theory or Marxist criticism. So in place of saying Marxism, it is better if we say Marxist literary criticism or Marxist criticism for that matter, to be very short. Now, how Marxist criticism has come up, there are reasons for that, of course, and the reasons are obviously very social, political, cultural, and historical. As Marxism came as a critique of capitalism and tried to reinterpret, redefine the social point of view, so much so the critics and thinkers and writers also gave a thought to Marxist ideas and tried to bring certain ideas into the study of literature. The first noted critic of Marxist literary criticism is, of course, George Lukács. Lukács was responsible for proposing perhaps the uh, basic Marxist aesthetics of literature. Lukács wanted to propose an aesthetics, a Marxist aesthetics, of course. However, he did not succeed because he did not come out with an elaborate and overarching theory of Marxist interpretation of literature. But of course, he was very instrumental and very influential critic as far as Marxist literary criticism is concerned, followed by the rest of the critics, of course. Now, why Marxist criticism became so influential and later on popular also, where because of the background reasons, the contexts which were prevalent those days in Europe and in America. In the earlier episode, we learned about new criticism, and we also learned about how new critics were focusing exclusively on textual study of literature. And context was being sidelined. So critics wanted to bring the contexts back into the study of literature. And what kind of contexts were to be brought into the study of literature was the primary concern. And of course, the social and political and economic. And he did that, literary critics, Marxist literary critics did that. They brought in the contexts, different contexts in the study of literature. So this lopsidedness, this ignorance of or deliberate exclusion of the contexts was perhaps the important reason why critics turned towards the contextual study of literature. Now, what contexts were to be brought into the study of literature was the concern, and Marxism provided the necessary guidelines for critics to interpret literature. So, Marxist literary criticism, for that matter, is materialistic and social in its orientation. To begin with, it is materialistic, it is social. It discusses, primarily it discusses the relation of literature and society. And this relation is multivalent, multiple in its nature, because literature and society are related in different ways, and Marxist criticism tries to explore these ways of interconnectivity between literature and. So that is first thing that we must learn. The second thing is this, that Marxist literary criticism took on certain issues which were very important in Marxism. For example, now we shall turn towards some concepts of Marxism. As I said, the connection, the relation between literature and society was the staple point of discussion for Marxist critics. Now we shall turn towards a brief discussion of some of the concepts that are very important in the study of literature, the Marxist concept. The first, of course, is base and superstructure. The second one is ideology. The third one is hegemony. And there is also a discussion of, to an extent, of the form and content, which has turned out to be a very controversial issue, both in the Marxist and in the non-Marxist discourses about literature. To go back to the first point of the first concept of base and superstructure, you shall see Marx proposed this metaphor, which later on became very important, not just in the study of literature, but in the study of all social sciences and languages, and even in other branches of knowledge. We have tried to understand that Marxism was basically a critique of, the spelling is CRITIQUE, and it is somewhat different from the regular term called criticism. So better we understand the nuance of the word critic, the term critic. So it was, Marxism was the critique of the economic conditions, the political conditions, or what you call the capitalism, to use a carpet term. While Marx and Engels interpreted or analyzed the historical and social conditions, they used a metaphor called base and superstructure. While base is the economic determinants, the economic conditions, and the superstructure is all the allied discourses that come up through the economic conditions. So to be very simple and to be very brief, we can say that base is the economic situation, the economic conditions, and superstructure is the derivative of, the product of the economic conditions. So the relation between base and superstructure is, as the terms go, and terms are self-explanatory, I think. Base is what the base is, from where you have the ramifications of the products of different discourses. For example, if base consists of the economic conditions, superstructure consists of the discourses like army, religion, culture, and even this art and literature also. So the relation between economic conditions and the discourses is what the relation between base and superstructure. In other words, we can say that every discourse in the world is actually the product of the economic conditions. To be very precise again, we can say that literature is the result of, is the product of the economic conditions from which it has grown. So literature and art are not free from the economic conditions from which they have emerged. Or we can say that literature comes out of the certain economic conditions. And if this is applicable to literature, this is applicable to all forms of art, not just literature. So now we come to understand, we come to know that there is a direct link between economic conditions and literature. For example, if a writer writes on a particular issue, he or she writes because of the economic conditions that he or she lives in, and the economic conditions also affect adversely or positively in whatever way, but it influences the writing. So if we want to understand literature, we should turn towards the understanding of economic conditions. That is why the base is supposed to be the determinant. It determines, it controls the emergence of all discourses called literature and art, and even other discourses also. Politics is also the part of that. Army is also the part of that. Religion is also the part of that. Ethics and culture is also the part of superstructure. And all these are controlled and regulated, manipulated, and operated through the economic conditions, through the economic situations, the economic factors and aspects, which are vested or centered into the hands of the ruling class. So it is the ruling class which is at the base, and the ruling class controls the discourses that emerge out of the economic conditions. This is a rough idea of, or a very simplified version of, what base and superstructure is. Now, to what extent this is applicable to literature will be a matter of in detail discussion, and we will not go into that right now. Sometime we shall go into the discussion of how this is applicable to the study of literature. Yes, Shyam was raising a question perhaps.
Can we say that every text, a Marxist critic believes that every text that is written or produced has a context, and that context is economical?
This is again a very relative question, but yes, if the critic is Marxist in orientation, he will surely believe that economic conditions have very important role to play both in the production, circulation, and reception of literature. Okay. That is very true. But as I said, this is relative because Marxism is not a static or fixed kind of critical approach. There have been different versions and there have been successive phases of Marxism where recent Marxist critics have turned away from economic determinants towards other determinants. For example, there have been cultural forces. For example, there have been social and historical forces, racial forces, gender-based forces. Although all these have their power basis in economic conditions,
Yeah.
but then economic conditions have not enjoyed the same intensity, the same depth that they used to do in the traditional or orthodox Marxist criticism. So that is what we have to understand.
Correct. Sir, what about ideology and other concepts of Marxism?
Yeah, ideology is as famous as base and superstructure in Marxism.
For we have a great problem in understanding it.
Definitely, it is both a very famous and notorious also. Notorious because it has been very clearly misunderstood or very differently understood, and famous because it has been used for several times by critics and the students and researchers of Marxism. So ideology has been, but we shall see that ideology has been the core part of Marxism as much as base and superstructure.
Okay.
Ideology is difficult because ideology has been understood more on theoretical level and less on practical level. Though Marxism emphasizes praxis, that is practical considerations, and less theoretical considerations, because Marxism was basically a theory which was revolution oriented. They wanted change, social change in the world, and they also wanted to develop a worldview. Ideology is more concerned with worldview. The first thing that we should know about ideology is this, and Marx introduced this term because Marx wanted to understand the relation between society and the classes. And ideology, according to him, worked as a strategy in the hands of the ruling class, and it was with the help of this strategy that the ruling class could convince the masses about certain ideas and values as important and permanent. And it was through these ideas and values that the masses could be oppressed. This was the basic assumption behind the term called ideology. But we shall see that ideology has been very differently interpreted in the successive phases. For example, ideology has been interpreted differently by George Lukács. It has been interpreted differently by Louis Althusser later on. And in even recent times, Terry Eagleton has interpreted ideology very differently. But we can understand that ideology is a strategy. It is a kind of tool in the hands of this ruling class through which they try to create an imaginary thing to be very true. And they succeed in convincing the society that certain values and ideas are more important. And because they are important, they are useful. And because they are important and useful, they are beneficial to the people in the society. And it is through the imposition of certain ideas and values that they try to exercise their dominance, and through dominance, they try to earn their profits.
Yeah.
This is what we can have the
As an
understanding of ideology.
Okay.
With ideology, we move on to the next one, and it is hegemony.
Yeah.
Hegemony is a term which was made popular by the Italian Marxist critic called Antonio Gramsci. And hegemony is as much famous and misunderstood as ideology is. I'll use three terms. with the help of which perhaps we can understand it. I'll not go into detail because the more you become detailed, the more confusing you become as far as hegemony is concerned or ideology is concerned. There are three terms that we have to understand. There is force. This force is multiplied by consent. So first, force plus consent is equal to coercion. That is hegemony. In simple terms, again, we can say the political force in the hands of the ruling class draws or brings out the consent of the intellectuals and the consent of the masses and imposes certain rules and regulations, certain ideas over the society, through which it tries to earn the benefits or ensure its rule. This is what you call hegemony. In other terms, it is domination, and this domination is not as has been traditionally understood. This domination
Physical.
is not that somebody imposes. It is earned through the consent of, through the approval of. That is, we as the people living in society approve certain forces, approve certain ideologies, approve certain ideas and values, and it is through our approval, through our consent as people living in the society, we allow the ruling classes to rule over us. So this was a very different, very revolutionary kind of notion that Gramsci proposed, and it took Marxist criticism much further and made Marxist criticism much wider and broader in a way. This also addresses to Ghanshyam's question about economic determinants. Here we do not have, we are not limited to economic conditions just. There are other forces also, like the hegemony, where we are not just limited to economic conditions, there are other conditions as well. So intellectual aspects also come into the matrix of Marxist literary criticism.
Yes.
This whole notion of Marxist literary criticism, Marxism in general and criticism in particular, boils down to the worldview. Marxist literary criticism is all about creating worldview. How do we look at literature? Or how should we look at literature? So Marxist criticism gives us a particular worldview to look at literary texts. And how this worldview is created? Through our understanding of the relation between literature and society. Next, we shall come towards the discussion of form and content. Form and content is one of the important aspects, one of the important ideas in Marxist criticism. We have discussed some of the important notions earlier. This one is also important because there has been a lot of discussion over the relation between form and content and whether form is important or content is important. If you go for non-Marxist critical approaches, you shall see that content is considered important, form is considered important, but in Marxist criticism, content is considered important. The reason is that content relates to contexts, form relates to structure. So there is an oppositional relation between form and content, in the sense structure and substance, because form refers to structure and content refers to substance. In other words, we can say form refers to structure and content refers to subject matter. So whether subject matter is important or structure is important, whether content is important or form is important.
So, sir, does that mean that theme of a poem is important, or how the way a poem is written is important?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. The form of the poem and the meaning of the poem or the theme of the poem. For Marxist critics, it is the content that is important and not the form. And this is because, as I earlier said, this is because content is related to the society, the politics, the culture, and many other discourses which are important. And according to Marxist criticism, the relation of literature and society is important. According to them, literature is not autonomous, it is not closed, it is not fixed, it is not stable, and that it is not self-related. It is related to the realities around itself. That is why content is important. Now, this we have to understand in different phases, because the discussion of form and content has been differently interpreted by Marxist critics at different phases of its development. For example, Lukács considered content to be very important and form to be not at all important. And of course, this was the reason why he so seriously criticized the modernist writers like James Joyce in his essay, The Ideology of Modernism. Because according to him, they were creating false consciousness. In other words, they were creating a false reality, which was not actually the reality. It was not the social reality. Because the modernist writers like Joyce and Woolf were concentrating on the form and not the content. Once you focus on the content, then form automatically follows. So you need not bother about form. You should bother about the content. You should bother about the subject matter, the themes. Themes they determine what should be the structure of your writing. That was what Lukács was arguing. The same can be seen in subsequent developments of the relationship between form and content. Most of the Marxist literary critics believed that it is content that is important and form is not important, because they believed that form would take the study of literature away from society, away from politics, away from the ideology. So they did not bother about. This does not mean that they were not concerned with the aesthetic issues, because then we come to the consideration of aesthetics also, because form has a lot to do, traditionally speaking, form has a lot to do with the aesthetics of literature. So is aesthetics important or is social consideration important? You can understand it that way as well, because form has to do with the aesthetics of literature, and content has to do with the relation of literature to non-literary things that surround. So there are different issues related to form and content. This discussion between form and content is not simply related to only these terms, they refer to so many other issues that surround form and content.
But sir, originally, does Marx speak about these distinctions, or has he favored any of that?
No, Marx doesn't consider literature. He does not discuss literature in detail. Per se. Naturally, there is no discussion of this sort. Directly, there is no discussion, even though Marx always favored the relationship between literature and society, and not just literature, any discipline for that matter, and the society, the relation between that discipline and society. So this was Lukács and the literary critics, Marxist literary critics who followed him, that they tried to develop this kind of aesthetics, this kind of theory of literature, in which they emphasized content and they did not bother about form. The reason I already talked about, that they were bothered about the relationship between literature and society. They were bothered about the consciousness that literature should bring among the readers through the depiction of, through the portrayal of the relation between literature and society.
Right.
So form for them was not important. Content was very important.
Yeah.
But this is the first phase. In the second phase of Marxist criticism, which is a recent one, you have two critics, who have differently interpreted the relation between form and content. This is very much like ideology. earlier ideology in conventional Marxist criticism, our ideology was differently understood. With Althusser, we have an entirely different ideology of different conception of ideology. Same is true with the discussion of the relation between form and content. In the first phase of Marxist criticism, we have this emphasis on content and virtual ignorance, virtual neglect of the form. But when we enter into the second phase of Marxist criticism, a recent one, we understand that the relation between form and content is somewhat differently interpreted. I shall give one example of Pierre Mecheray and Terry Eagleton. Eagleton and Mecheray interpreted the relation between form and content very differently. For example, they argued, especially Mecheray argued, and Brecht also argued. Some of you might be knowing there was a Bertolt Brecht. Brecht was not only a playwright, he was also a critic and a great Marxist critic and a very close friend of Walter Benjamin. And that there was some sort of severe argument between Brecht and Theodor Adorno. They all belong to Frankfurt School of Marxism. Adorno and Brecht approached literature with the same considerations, with the same assumptions, though their positions were different. But the conclusions that they drew were somewhat identical. And they are related to the relation between form and content. According to Brecht and also Adorno, and consequently Mecheray and Eagleton, the relation between form and content is not as previously understood by the Marxist critics. It is very complex. By experimenting in the form of literature, in a way, writers try to counter the ideologies. So, according to them, form is very important. Look at the serious defense that Theodor Adorno comes out with the writing of Beckett. Beckett's writing is experimentative. We all know the kind of absurdist writing that he made was clearly very experimental. But Adorno defended it. The same Adorno who was a Marxist critic in training and in approach also. He defended because modern literature, in different forms, was trying to create a counter, a resistance, an alternative to the ideology which was inbuilt. So it was, form was an attempt on the part of the writers to resist the ideology, which was likely to be imposed upon the writers and the society through content. So that we can understand
in that sense. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, Mecheray went for decentered form, deconstructive and decentered form.
Right.
That will take another session for us to discuss.
But so basically, it is more of a complex things as we progress with form and content. It won't be a one-way kind of understanding.
And my appeal to the reader, the viewers, and the students and researchers and teachers would be that they should not understand it as the traditional Marxist critics have done. That there has been a development, there has been a revision in the understanding of the relation between form and content, and it is not that easy that we can understand it.
Yeah.
Frederick Jameson would be another version to understand the relation between form and content.
Sir, my next question to you would be, and I believe this should be the last question for this particular session, the relevance of Marxism in literary theory. Could you throw some light on it? Whether Marxism is relevant today as an approach, as an ideology to literary criticism and theory?
My question would be some way political. I would say yes. It is relevant, and Marxism will be relevant. I would say Marxism will be relevant forever. Whether Marxist criticism, literary criticism will be relevant or not, can be a matter of contention, can be a matter of argument. But Marxism has certainly paved ways, because it helps us to develop worldviews, certain worldviews, because Marxism always teaches us to be critical. It always encourages us to raise doubts. It always encourages us to think differently. It always encourages us to reject what is imposed over us and think differently. In a way, it encourages us to think independently and differently. So if that is what Marxism is all about, then I'm sure Marxist literary criticism will also help us. Provided that we better understand that Marxist criticism, literary criticism, towards the end of the 20th century, and now we are in the 21st century, has undergone a lot of changes. So anyone who is a strong supporter and believer in Marxist literary criticism should be a practitioner also. It's not important that you believe in theory. It's important that you understand the different changes that have undergone in the considerations of Marxist criticism. Because Marxist criticism is not a one-way approach. Once you do that, you become dogmatic. You become orthodox. There is something called orthodox Marxism as well. And Eagleton calls it to be simplistic Marxism. To use his word, he calls it to be vulgar Marxism.
Vulgar.
We should not practice this vulgar Marxism. We should practice the Marxism, the Marxist approach, which is deep, entrenched, well studied, well organized, and well informed. We should be informed. If we are the students and researchers of Marxist literary criticism, we must be aware of the recent developments, in Marxist criticism, and they have been multifarious, they have been diverse, they have been brought out in different directions, and if you go by the lopsided and single-centered approach, then it will be very difficult for you.
Right.
But to answer to your question directly, I would say yes, Marxist literary criticism is relevant even today. It will continue to be relevant as long as people will continue to think, as long as we shall continue to think in dialectical manner, that is in manner opposite to other. And opposite, I mean to say, as long as we continue to disagree with others, and as long as others continue to disagree with us, and as long as this tacit understanding of disagreement will be there, Marxist criticism will be relevant. My point is that we should not be stagnant. We should not be fixed into particular areas, into particular notions, because Marxism itself has undergone several revisions, several changes. One very glaring example, of course, of Louis Althusser, the way he interpreted ideology, the way Maschere interpreted form, the way Eagleton interpreted Marxist criticism itself, are some of the finest examples. And these are the best practitioners, best theorists of Marxist criticism. So we have to understand these things. It is progressive. In the positive sense of the term, Marxist criticism is progressive. It is not static. It does not stop at a particular point. It is not dogmatic. It revises itself. It reviews itself. It criticizes itself. It problematizes itself. That is what we have to understand. And it is against all these things, against this background of its progression, that it will continue to be relevant even in the future. I hope I was able to give answer to your question.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
So thank you, sir, for enlightening us on Marxism as a literary theory. Marxism as an economical ideology or theory could be studied later on. Of course, we'll throw some light on that too. But for now, we'll stop here with Marxism as a literary theory, as a literary approach to criticize certain texts. I thank Dr. Anand Kulkarni for enlightening us on these issues. I thank Dr. Pranav Ratnaparkhi for this wonderful platform. And I also thank the audience, the viewers for this. Keep watching Crit Talks with Dr. Anand Kulkarni and keep subscribing to our channel, Wise Words. Thank you.